Lebanon's caretaker prime minister appeals to Israel to fully commit and withdraw from all the regions and positions it occupied. Long-displaced residents of South Lebanon return to their homes after a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah takes effect. And the UNRWA warns of the repercussions of hunger in the Gaza Strip, reaching critical levels, calling for an immediate ceasefire. It's 4 p.m. Cairo local time, and you're now watching Q News. We begin today's bulletin with the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati has appealed to Israel to fully commit and withdraw from all the regions and positions it occupied hours after the truce between Israel and Hezbollah was activated. A ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah was held after both sides accepted an agreement brokered by the United States and France. The agreement is a major achievement for the United States in the last days of U.S. President Joe Biden's administration. The Speaker of Lebanon's parliament, Nabih Berri, has declared that Lebanon is entering a new phase after what he described as the successful thwarting of Israeli aggression. Berri added that the war with Israel had been in the most dangerous phase that his country had endured in its history. He called on displaced citizens to return to their land even if it's in ruins, emphasizing the importance of resilience in rebuilding the nation. The international community, including the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Union, Germany, the United Nations, Egypt, Turkey, Jordan, and Iran, have welcomed a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah. The community welcomed the ceasefire that went into effect early on Wednesday between Israel and Hezbollah and expressed hopes that this could also pave the way towards an end to the war in Gaza. Long-displaced residents of South Lebanon have started returning to their homes after a ceasefire took effect at 4 a.m. local time. Thousands of people made their way into southern Lebanon, defying a warning from the Israeli military to stay away from previously evacuated areas. The ceasefire has brought relief across the nation, coming after days of some of the most intense airstrikes and clashes since the war began, though many wonder if the agreement to stop fighting will hold. Displaced Lebanese families have celebrated at their shelter in Sidon City ahead of the announcement of a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah. An Israel-Hezbollah ceasefire marks the first major step towards ending the region-wide unrest triggered by October 7, 2023. The fighting in Lebanon escalated into an all-out war in September with massive Israeli airstrikes across the country and an Israeli ground invasion of the south. The Lebanese military has asked displaced people returning to southern Lebanon to avoid frontline villages and towns near the border, where the Israeli military is still present until the troops withdraw. Thousands of people have been returning to other previously evacuated areas in South Lebanon in defiance of an Israeli warning to avoid all previously evacuated areas. Many of those areas were hit by strikes just hours before the ceasefire took effect. For more analysis, we now move to Salma Al-Fi'i in our newsroom.
Thank you, Salma. And for further analysis on the ceasefire in Lebanon, we are joined today from Cairo by Al Ahram Weekly Managing Editor Khalid Dawood. Welcome, Khalid, to Qnews.
Thank you, Salma.
If I may ask you, what is your comment on the ceasefire agreement that was just enforced a few hours ago in Lebanon today?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's definitely a welcome development that the Israeli slaughter of the innocent Lebanese people has come to an end, but let's hope that it's not going to be a temporary end. I mean, I think that this is not a situation in which the Israelis can certainly declare victory because the original aim that was declared by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which is the return of the Israelis to the towns bordering Lebanon, has not been achieved. And all evidence on the ground confirmed that the military power of Hezbollah, while certainly weakened by massive bombing over the past nearly 3 months, but they can still give in a fight. And up until 2 days ago, they managed to fire 340 missiles at different Israeli towns, including Tel Aviv, and causing damage to buildings and to properties, and forcing more than 4 million Israelis to stay underground in shelters. But at the end of the day, this is a very difficult deal. There are many requirements for this deal to become firm, including the deployment of the Lebanese army to the southern parts. There are certain requirements in the agreement that mentions dismantling the military capabilities of Hezbollah or any other military groups. And of course, that's not going to be something easy to achieve, knowing the Israeli politics. And then, of course, there's the most critical point, in my point of view, which is that the agreement gives the Israelis up to 60 days in order to pull out their troops from the areas they occupied in South Lebanon, while there are no real guarantees that the timeline in which this is going to take place, nor about the deployment of the Lebanese army. This is definitely not going to be an easy task. So I can say that it's definitely a welcome development.
Actually, Khaled, this was my next question. And do you think that we would be seeing any violations in the coming 60 days, which is supposed to be the amount of the ceasefire in Lebanon in the coming days? Do you think it's going to be smooth?
Well, as I said, it's very difficult. Certainly, there is a near agreement within the Lebanese factions, including Hezbollah, that there needs to be a kind of a break, a kind of a halt for the daily vicious Israeli bombing. We've seen yesterday, just hours before reaching the agreement, the Israelis flexed their muscles, and they bombed up to 20 targets, 20 buildings. They totally destroyed in a matter of 2 minutes. So there are a lot of challenges coming up, including the monitoring mechanism that's going to be headed by the United States. Of course, the Israeli Prime Minister would need to brag about Israel's so-called right to respond freely to any perceived threats from southern Lebanon. But I think what American officials are saying is that this is not necessarily going to be a carte blanche. There's going to be this monitoring committee, including the United States and France, and they will have to look into complaints before saying that there has been a violation in the first place. And of course, let me refer, Salma, to a very, very other challenging point, which is the ongoing war in Gaza. I mean, Mr. Netanyahu tried to sell the deal by saying that now this would leave Hamas alone. But also, at the same time, there's going to be increasing pressure on the Israeli Prime Minister domestically and internationally to stop the war in Gaza as well, because if the Israelis, Mr. Netanyahu, stop the war with Lebanon without achieving all his so-called conditions of utter total victory, there must
Sure.
be a similar chance to reach an
Of course.
agreement with Hamas in Gaza.
Absolutely. And Khalid, how do you think in Lebanon they would resolve the presidential vacancy issue in the near future?
Again, that's part of the many challenges facing this agreement. I think the Israelis and the Americans, and to a great extent the French as well, are expecting some sort of an increasing pressure within the complicated Lebanese political class that would lead to filling up this position of the president, but not just that, also strengthening the Lebanese army and relatively weakening Hezbollah, in which is something not very easy to achieve, and it also involves Iran. I mean, if the situation remains tense between Iran and Israel, or Iran and the new U.S. administration led by upcoming President Donald Trump, definitely this is going to complicate further the situation. But of course, there is going to be increasing pressure in the coming weeks and months for the Lebanese to put their house in order. It's been more than 2 years in which Lebanon did not
Absolutely.
have a president.
Yes.
So definitely that's going to be among the top priorities in the coming weeks.
And do you see how I don't know, how do you expect the Lebanese army to secure the country's southern border following the ceasefire?
It does have the ability to do so. I mean, the problem is that, I mean, there was a similar agreement after the Israeli war against Lebanon in 2006, which led to Resolution 1701 that also mentioned the deployment of the Lebanese army in South Lebanon. But, I mean, unfortunately, the Israelis were the first one to break this agreement by continuously attacking Lebanese territory and conducting violations of the Lebanese airspace, and the deployment of the Lebanese army did not actually materialize, I mean, over the past 18 years, and it gave the ability to Hezbollah to rebuild its powers there. It's not going to be an easy mission, but probably there are lots of pledges to receive support from the United States, from some key Arab countries, as well as the France. So hopefully this could strengthen the Lebanese army and make it able to deploy in southern Lebanon, while, of course, maintaining the very difficult balance with Hezbollah as a major military force that exists in Lebanon.
That was Al Ahram Weekly Managing Editor Khalid Dawood, and thank you so much for your insights, Khalid. And we are back again to you, Salma Marwan.
Thank you so much, Salma, for conducting this interview. Now back to our developments in Lebanon. At least one Israeli airstrike shook the Lebanese capital of Beirut late on Tuesday, moments after U.S. President Joe Biden said Israel and Hezbollah had agreed to a ceasefire deal. At least 24 people were killed in strikes across Lebanon on Tuesday, according to local authorities, as Israel signaled it aims to keep pummeling Hezbollah before the ceasefire took hold at 4 a.m. local time on Wednesday.
Once I location here, I can see it is or Mali or Commission.
The Israeli military has said that its forces opened fire in Lebanon on a number of cars that approached an area it said was restricted. The Israeli military reported that the vehicles left, though it was unclear if there were any injuries. It also warned residents of evacuated areas in Lebanon as displaced people returned south. The Israeli military said soldiers remain stationed in southern Lebanon, with the Air Force and aerial defense on standby for any ceasefire violations. Syria's state news agency has reported that Israeli strikes late yesterday on Lebanon's northern border crossings with Syria killed 6 and wounded 12. Lebanon's Transport Minister Ali Hamiyeh said the strikes targeted Lebanon's 3 northern border crossings with Syria for the first time. The strikes came moments after U.S. President Joe Biden announced that a ceasefire would come into effect at 4 a.m. local time. Israeli raids on Lebanon's eastern crossings in recent weeks had already sealed off those routes into Syria. Rockets fired from Lebanon have destroyed some areas in a northern Israeli town. Hezbollah fired rockets into Israel on Tuesday, triggering air raid sirens across the country's north. At the town's central bus station, several buses were destroyed. Workers were seen cleaning shattered windows of a local shopping mall.
All
The Israeli city of Haifa and the border between Israel and Lebanon appeared calm early on Wednesday as a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah began. Israel approved a ceasefire agreement with Lebanon's Hezbollah militants on Tuesday, which would end nearly 14 months of fighting linked to the war in the Gaza Strip. Ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to move to a live coverage of a press conference of Egyptian Foreign Minister Badr Abdul Ati and his Qatari counterpart.
القضية الفلسطينية
And we are trying to consolidate our efforts as Arab countries in order to support the Palestinian cause. We have talked about the pressing importance for reaching an instant ceasefire and the importance for us to reach a swift agreement regarding the release of hostages. As well, we spoke about the importance of an unhindered entry of humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, and we have discussed all the administrative measures there too. As well, we are going to speak about the very important conference that we are going to host soon. And we have as well spoken about the humanitarian response that we are going to carry out and how we're going to mobilize all kinds of humanitarian aid to the Gaza Strip. And as well, I and my brother, His Excellency the Prime Minister, that there is no way stability can be achieved in the region without the establishment of an independent, sovereign Palestinian state, and without upholding the provisions of the international humanitarian law and all the United Nations relevant resolutions. As well, we have discussed the declaration of a ceasefire in Lebanon and the matters there too. And we are aspiring that everything announced is going to be operationalized on the ground. Definitely, we are more than supporting the sovereignty of the Lebanese state and the deployment of the national Lebanese army in the south of Litani region, and the issue of electing a sovereign president there. We are aspiring for that to happen without any foreign dictations or any foreign interventions. We have as well discussed together some of the important pressing regional and international subjects, and I would like to once more welcome His Excellency the Prime Minister for his visit in Egypt and for his keenness on establishing synergy and joint consultations between our two brotherly nations. And right now I give you the floor, Your Excellency, the Prime Minister. In the name of Allah, the most merciful, the most compassionate, peace be upon you, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you, Your Excellency, for this warm hospitality. and for arranging all the arranging everything relating to this visit, whether by coordinating my visit with the President of Egypt and the Prime Minister. In fact, I discussed with His Excellency President Abdel Fattah Sisi and with the Prime Minister of Egypt a lot of subjects regarding joint investment mega projects and the Qatari investments as well that have been carried out before in our brotherly nation or country of Egypt as well. We are aspiring for this visit to be a continuation of the working groups and their activities in order for us to be able to achieve these mega investment projects and in order to consolidate economic cooperation between the two states, being Qatar and Egypt, of course. As well, we have discussed the importance of joint cooperation between our two brotherly nations relative to a lot of pressing regional issues, whether relating to Gaza and what's happening there, or relating to Sudan. And definitely we have discussed the launching of some joint humanitarian projects provided for our brothers and sisters in these two states. Definitely, we have discussed the humanitarian conference that is going to be held in Egypt soon about the cause of Gaza, and definitely we are going to be mobilizing all kinds of humanitarian aid through this conference. In fact, in my deliberations with His Excellency President Abdel Fattah Sisi and His Excellency the Prime Minister of Egypt, we in our deliberations have discussed the war waged on the Gaza Strip and the war in Lebanon, and how this conflict that we've been warning of its magnitude in the beginning, how it could actually increase in scale and how we can extend to hinder actually all kinds of states in the region and their stability. Definitely the situation is quite unfortunate, and the state of Qatar is more than keen to establish continuous consultations with the state of Egypt, specifically in subjects that include reaching a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip as soon as possible. Definitely we have spoken about the importance of launching consolidated and intensified and condensed coordination between our two states and between ourselves and other Arab states in order for us to reach a consolidated Arab vision for the future that is replete with geopolitical challenges. As well, we have spoken about the truce, the proposed truce between Lebanon and Israel, and we hope that this truce agreement can be fruitful and can result in achieving a ceasefire. And as well, we hope to establish or to reach some kind of a parallel agreement of a ceasefire in Gaza Strip. So once more, thank you so much, Your Excellency, the Foreign Minister of Egypt, and I'd like to thank His Excellency President Abdel Fattah Sisi as well.
That was a live coverage of a press conference between the Egyptian foreign minister and his Qatari counterpart. Now in Gaza, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, has warned of the repercussions of hunger in the Gaza Strip reaching critical levels, calling for an immediate ceasefire. The UN agency said in a brief statement on X that hunger in Gaza has reached critical levels as people search for leftover food in the garbage that has been left for weeks. The agency added, with the onset of winter, the situation is rapidly deteriorating and survival is becoming impossible without urgent humanitarian aid. It closed its statement by saying that a ceasefire must be reached immediately. That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we've been covering. Lebanon's caretaker prime minister appeals to Israel to fully commit and withdraw from all the regions and positions it occupied. Long displaced residents of South Lebanon return to their homes after a ceasefire between Israel and Hezbollah takes effect. UNRWA warns of the repercussions of hunger in the Gaza Strip, reaching critical levels, calling for an immediate ceasefire. This concludes our news bulletin for the hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates on Q News.